Hello, you beautiful human, and welcome back to She Said What, the podcast. Today is part one of an incredible two-part series where I sit down with my friends Murray and Danielle Brown and we deep dive into his incredible story of resilience and positive mindset. Murray was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis from birth. He went through a full lung transplant at the age of 18 and then was diagnosed with brain cancer a few years ago as well. So we speak about his story of the incredible mindset that he has, how to build resilience, how to just keep going with life, and also how to prepare yourself and your family to die. This is such an incredible story and I know you are going to love it. Welcome back to She Said What, the podcast. Today I am here with two incredible people that are actually really, really close to my heart. Danielle and Murray Brown, welcome to the couches.
Thank you.
Ooh, thanks.
This is really exciting. For full disclosure, Murray and Danielle and I have known each other for 16 years?
More.
17?
More, because from start of high school.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Huh?
More.
That's
pushing
crazy.
on
I feel old.
20.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we went,
Yeah.
I was going to say almost 20 because we were in year 7, like you were at the West and I was at the East,
Yeah.
but year
We were
7, year
West.
8.
I was a Westie first.
Yeah.
I
And then
went
I
to the
moved
East
I knew
for
with
the
Ria.
Arts
that.
Academy.
Yeah, for the
Oh, I don't think
arts.
I knew that.
Well, the more you know. Anyway, so that makes me feel really fucking old.
Yeah. I can't do the quick maths of when it was, but it's more than 15. It's closer to 20.
Yuck. Anyway, for those who do not know you, have never heard of you guys before, who are you and what is your story?
So my name's Murray Brown. I guess I'm a father of 4 kids. I got an incredible wife, and I guess my story is probably more of a story of health, resilience, and probably belief or a inner belief that I can push through any adversity to build a life that I want to live. So yeah, that's me.
Danielle, would you like to jump in?
Well, I'm Danielle Brown. I'm the mother of his 4 children. I am his, what did you describe me? Beautiful wife? I think that's what you said.
Or incredible, something like that.
Oh,
Yep.
well, sounds better when you say it. And tag along with every part that you do.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that you just kind of grazed over your whole life story. Were you born with cystic fibrosis?
Yeah, so I was born with cystic fibrosis. So I have an older brother with cystic fibrosis, and then so they knew that there was a chance of me having cystic fibrosis, and then I was it. So
Yeah.
so they obviously knew some of the treatments and whatever, and my brother hasn't had a transplant yet, hasn't had anything, but unfortunately or fortunately for me, I was sicker than he was with him. So he was sicker at the start, and then sort of like in his in his 20s, he became good, whereas I was I just progressively got worse, that then deemed that I needed a transplant. So, but in general is that, I think I started going into hospital probably at the age of 10,
Yeah.
and then, or probably less, younger than that, but I really noticed it when I was 10, and then it just kept coming. So.
What is cystic fibrosis for those that are listening?
Yeah. So cystic fibrosis is a problem with your lungs and digestive system and reproductive system. So, but it's, I guess the best way to describe it, it normally affects normally the most severe effects are the lungs. And it's sort of like when you get a cold and you're really, really chesty and you need to, I guess, cough up a lung is the...
You got the mucus.
Yeah, so you get a build up of mucus, and then you know how you like spit out some green stuff. So that would be me constantly, but it would be like cupfuls of whatever. So
It was really such a catch back in those days when you have just cups of just phlegm, just sitting on your bedside table. They're just big cups. You do your little subtle flick the lid and just it in. Oh,
And you were like, he's
that's the
coming home
one
with
for
me.
Oh yeah.
but that is the reality of it, is that I was always known as the coughing person and always had
you
that.
could hear you before you saw you.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And I always had the voice, like you can hear, and I probably still have that similar voice of like you can hear the CF voice in me. And yeah, it's just I had like a big 6-pack, and like I definitely I didn't work out at all. I didn't do any exercise, but I
Just
was
from
just
coughing.
so much that it would my
He doesn't cough anymore, and you can tell.
Okay, wow. So born with it, it's like quite a like mucusy, you're coughing a lot.
Yep.
But your parents knew how to deal with it because of your older brother.
Yes. So they had the idea, but obviously then I got worse. So
Yeah.
I was in hospital. I would normally go into hospital every school holidays. So I would go in like probably 3 or 4 times a year. They call it tune-ups. So it's like a car. And you go in for a week or two. At the start, it would be like a week I would go in for. And then they obviously gradually moved it to 2 weeks. So because I didn't really want to miss school and I wanted to be the typical, the average person and whatever.
Yeah.
So I would then like just void the school holidays and then go in and then obviously go back to school and whatever it was. But there was obviously many times where I missed school or had to, do school from other from
by
hospital.
high school you were missing lots.
Chunks.
Yeah. What do they do in a tune-up?
So they normally do IV antibiotics. They do like morning and afternoon physio. They normally feed you quite well. So CFs have a high fat diet. So there's a whole lot of stuff in like the cystic fibrosis thing, which is like you can
they get a whole special menu.
Yeah,
like
so
a whole special extra menu.
Yeah, so when you
could have some perks, right?
Yeah, so
it's not all
we
bad.
Would get
no, you're okay.
We would get like I would get breakers or like chocolate milk and whatever, and I would get so even though the menu said I don't know, let's go like mashed potato and chicken or whatever, and I don't know, peas and carrots, I'd be able to select I guess a smorgasbord of things. So I would be able to select like fish fingers, chicken schnitzel. I would be able to
lasagna.
Get, lasagna.
Yeah.
But is that a CF thing or is that a Murray Brown thing? Because I remember going into the hospital to see you and you'd have like your little mini bar full of like the big M's.
Yes.
And I think it's just because of you. I don't know.
It was definitely a CF thing, but I also
schmooze the nurses.
Well, yeah, definitely. I knew the best contacts to have, and they were the menu ladies that they were all ladies, just to confirm. But they, that's what I called them. So I didn't want to anyway. And they. It was the old, I guess it was the old days. So it would be like you got to tick the box and whatever. Anyway, I would not do my menu ever, and I would go down to them and like chat with them for like half an hour and be like, oh,
you'd schmooze them.
Yeah,
correct.
You absolutely schmooze them
for all the extra big M's.
Yeah, well, not just big M's, but everything. Like it would be something that I mean, it would fill up your day. So obviously, hospital's pretty boring and pretty challenging. And especially, my parents work full time. So both of them they came in when they could, but they weren't there like every night or every day or whatever. So they didn't stay. And what I was going to say was and then obviously my sisters and brothers and whatever, they were older, so they had their own lives and so it was very much I guess you've got to fend for yourself type thing.
Remember I got a job there?
Yeah.
That's how dedicated I was in the cafe.
Oh,
yeah. So she worked it.
Yeah, it's
that
3
was
months of my life we don't need to talk about. But I used to come up. Was it on my breaks or just afterwards?
No, it was
or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'd come up and I'd visit.
Yeah. So that was when I was 18. So that was just before I was going to have transplant. So yeah.
Because I remember we used to catch the bus and it was 2 buses to get to
Did
the
you catch
hospital.
the bus?
To get the Monash.
Yeah,
I was
to
never
get
that.
to Monash.
I was never that dedicated. Wow.
Yeah,
I
to
didn't
come
know
up
that.
and see.
Yeah, and it was really cool. Like when you I think about it now and how, the boys and yourself and some others would come in and they would pretty much have to like dedicate their whole day. They'd have to plan the travel route and they'd have to do it all. But yeah, we run amok. But
That's
apart
really
from
special because you could have just waited a few days and seen him back at school.
Yeah. We're like, nah. And we took those 2 buses. I remember it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in hospital a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Talk us through, like, why do people with CF have transplants, and talk us through your transplant journey as well.
Yeah. So I guess the reason why you have a transplant is because your I guess your lung function, or the main criteria would be the lung function. So your capacity to be able to breathe would go below a certain point. And they have different ways to measure it, but I guess everyone is, let's go 100%. And then when you get to about 40% capacity, then you start having the conversation on, you know, like maybe you engage the transplant team and see where it goes. So I was in and out of hospital, as I said, a few times, and I think over my whole journey pre-transplant, I probably had maybe like 60 or 70 admissions, and then you go 2 weeks of that, and so it's about, I think all up it would be this is all pre and post transplant would be probably like 3 years in hospital. So yeah, it's quite a long time. So you got to know nurses, you got to get the vibe. But anyway, we're getting back to the main part of what we're talking about. So so the main reason is for transplant in CFs is the lungs, and the reason why is because of the lung capacity obviously drops because the mucus, I guess, is so stuck in your lungs, and you can obviously have different viruses and other things that make it more, set, I guess. It's not a great way to describe it.
Not
I'm
a
sure a
medical
doctor
term.
or someone will definitely void that. But anyway, that's how I'm going to describe it. So ended up.
The analogy you always use that I always like is that you describe it before you had your transplant, you was like breathing through a straw.
Yeah. So
Fuck.
so I got to so the lung function normally stops, or they try to stop it, because so if you can imagine, you've got to just breathe as quick as you can, as fast as you can into this like tubey thing, and your head, like, so if you're doing that, your head starts to go like red or purple. So I'd always constantly like push the limit of where I could go. So, but I remember the last time I did it, I think it was like 12% I had of lung capacity. And I was like, okay, I'm done. And the way, before transplant, it was definitely, it's like breathing through a straw. So I was on oxygen, not 24/7, because I felt like if
you were stubborn and you didn't want to.
Correct. Yeah. So
do you remember the time that was not long before you transplant, we went to the shops? We had to run in for something, and it should have been like a 5-minute thing, and I think it took us the better part of 3 hours.
Why?
That might be a slight exaggeration. I can't quite remember. It was so long ago, but it was not 5 minutes.
No.
It had to have at least been an hour and a half. It felt like 3 hours.
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty sick by the end. I probably should have been in a wheelchair. I should have. There's a few other things, but realistically, I was taking oxygen at night, but I wasn't doing it during the day. And the main reason why is because I felt like if I took that oxygen route, then that's the only thing you can have before you just turn the volume up on the oxygen tank, and then that's sort of it.
Yeah, like that's a slippery slope. Once you start having oxygen a day,
and you rely on it,
you don't really go back.
But then if you're hypoxic, or you're not getting enough oxygen into your brain and whatever, then it's also dangerous.
Yeah,
so you've got to.
You're like, ooh.
So my stats would range around like 85, where normally it would be 100, and I feel like anyone that has like medical knowledge will be like, oh, that's not good.
That's when you put the
when you put
O2 thing.
O2 on the
So
it would normally like low, and everyone puts you on oxygen at about 92. So that's where like
shit.
But I was around 85 when I had my before I had my transplant, and the hardest part was going for a shower. So the shower would take probably 2 hours, just because of the heat you would be like it would obviously take away your breath and it would really like exhaust you. So that was when I worked pretty much, I worked full time until maybe 2 or 3 months before my transplant. I really wanted to be normal, or, you know, I guess, let everyone know that I wasn't going to go down without a fight, because obviously I didn't know whether I would get a transplant. So it's one of those things that you sort of, you want to fight for as much as you can and then as long as you can. And then once you know, okay, I'm going to have a transplant, then it's the next, I think, thinking of, okay, how can I, so me and the doctors worked out a plan that I'd go in for 4 weeks, out for 6, in for 4, out for 6.
That's
so
a
we did
lot.
that. We did that for probably the last year, I reckon, of before my transplant. So from 18 to 19. So yeah.
Fuck.
But it wasn't that long when you really think about, like, it's only a year. So it's good.
Sure.
I think you have spent so long that before you had your transplant, that everyone always knew you as the sick kid.
Yes, definitely.
Because even like, you know, at school, it was Murray. You know, even still now, if I see people from school, I go, oh, you know, Murray Brown, like the sick guy.
Yeah.
I had one of the teachers came into work and I was saying about Murray and there was a bit of hesitant. I think they said to me, was he the one who was sick? I said, yep, that's the one.
Yeah.
That I think you always had that you spent, your sole focus was always not being that person.
Yeah.
But
not
ironically,
identifying.
I was.
Well,
anyway,
yeah.
that's
And
just how.
still very much.
Yes, correct.
But like not making that your identity.
No.
And being known for other things. Like when I was like, what's your story? And the first thing you said is, I'm a dad of 4.
Yeah.
Not, I have cystic fibrosis and brain cancer.
Correct.
No, never. That's never been your go-to ever.
No. And nor should it be, because there's other people that are struggling more than I am, but, you know, in the way. So.
Well, so you're more than just
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
your body.
Let's come back to the transplant.
Yeah.
Because I remember you got put on the transplant list and then it's like, okay, I'm getting a transplant, but you obviously don't know when, because unfortunately someone has to die for you to get the lungs.
Yeah.
So it's like this kind of moment of, I hope someone dies, but also that's a really bad thought to have. And also your body needs to be really prepared at all times to yeet it into surgery.
Yeah. So
did you ever think of it like that?
Yeah, I did. But
yeah, right. I didn't.
Oh.
Maybe I did, but I don't think that I did.
Yeah, so there's a few elements to it. One is that I would say the wait. So I was really, really fortunate. I only had to wait 4.5 months. And I guess the way the story goes is that the day I was going to have I had a nurse come in at like 6 a.m. and she did like a full bloods and all that. And it was really strange because I was like, why is she doing it? It's like 6 a.m. Why does she wake me up? Because normally like they wouldn't do any of that. And then she dropped the bloods and she was like freaking out. Like she was just, anyway. And I was like calm down. Like it's fine. Like I know it's potentially patronizing, but I knew this person very well. And I was like, okay, like I don't understand why it's so important. She didn't really say much to it. Anyway, and then I was saying to the doctor, and you obviously get these feelings when you are going to have a transplant. I'm like, it just feels like it's not going to happen. Like it just, and you know, you're getting sicker and sicker. You're progressively, so, you know, I would have a great mindset, probably I would say 95% of the time. And then you go into this spiral of like, okay, if I don't wake up or if it's not successful, like where would, you know, this be? Anyway, and so yeah, this day I was more just curious of like, when is it going to come? Anyway, and it ended up being that at 11:11 they told me that the doctor came in, and I looked at my phone and I remember it was 11:11, and then she said, yeah, you're going to have a transplant today. So it was Friday the 13th and 11:11. So yeah, it was pretty cool. And then
pretty cool.
So that, I guess that was a good omen for me. I'm like, okay, it's Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Bad for some, good for me. And obviously, yeah, like for the donor and my donor, you know, I always want to make my donor proud, my donor's family proud. So that's quite dear to my heart, and it's a motto that I sort of live by. So, but yeah, so from the time I got told though, and the actual timing of me getting the transplant was like 9 or 10 hours between. So you got a lot of time. They've got to obviously do all these tests and all these other things to make sure it's a match. But yeah, it in that regard, it was quite excruciating in just the way of like you having to wait and you're in your thoughts. And there was a few things that went in that testing that I'd call mum or I called Danielle. Danielle was in Yarrawonga, so she had to drive back 4 hours to, I guess, get to the hospital. But I called my mum, and I remember it like there was something that happened, and I remember I was asking her questions, and then I just stopped, and I was like, I've got to make this call, because if she obviously makes the decision of no or yes, and then it's wrong, then
there was potential risk.
Yeah. So there was potential risk.
mean.
Yeah.
So what was that decision? That no or yes?
Well, it was yes, as in like
obvious.
yes, we'll do it. But I don't want to reveal it, only because I don't know whether if forever if
fair
the thinking of it. Well, I know that in Australia you can't you can't match up a donor. Like you can't. I can't. I guess reveal
of course
the donor and whatever. So and I don't know the donor, but I'm saying I don't want to identify.
You get told very limited information about them, and then you are meant to write your letter to them, but that still gets very vetted. Is that the word?
Yeah.
And they, like, whoever it is at the transplant team or whoever, look through it, make sure there's no like identifying information. That's our understanding, but somebody's still yet to do the letter.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm still yet to do the letter is because I have always gone like, if I do, like, I want to make my donor family proud, so I'm like, okay, I will do it when I've had, like.
You keep waiting for
when
the
I
next
get married and have kids and whatever,
proud,
and then I'm like, okay, that'll make them proud. But then, ironically, I just keep doing more things, and I'm like, okay, I've gone overseas.
They'd be proud. Yeah. They would absolutely be proud.
They'd be proud.
Write the letter.
Well, I've got it.
Now you've said it on the podcast, so everyone's going to hold you accountable.
Yeah,
be
true,
like, where's
true.
Murray's letter?
Yes.
Okay, so you call your mum, and you're like, this has happened. I've potentially got a donor.
Yep. So then it obviously we ended up having a transplant at I guess 9 p.m. or something. My goodbye to Danielle was awful, as in like, when you think about oh my God, I might die on the table or whatever. And it is more successful than not that they'll be able to get you back. It's just the
yeah, they usually say that you'll come off the table. That was our understanding of it anyway. Yeah. We often hear what we want to hear. But it was very much
success. Got it.
It was very much like, you'll be fine, you'll come off the table. Obviously there's times that might not happen.
Yeah.
But it's the afterwards, the recovery and stuff. So literally our goodbye was like equivalent of like a high five.
Yeah.
That,
it
like,
wasn't even
a
bit
more endearing, but
it wasn't really a hug
more.
Or like I love you and like.
No, because you've also got like your whole family's around. And yeah, and also it is that intimate moment of like, shit, see ya. You're about to like go and have your whole chest cut open. Your lungs are getting taken out and somebody else is being put in there. So it's all a lot, and then you literally just go like, and just like, bye.
Yeah. So
see you when I see ya.
Yeah.
However I see ya.
So I guess it ended up being that I had my transplant, and I was only in ICU for 1 day, and I was in hospital for 13 days. So they were like, oh, should we go 12? And I was like, nah, let's go 13. Like 13, I feel like is my lucky number.
Yeah.
And then from that, I sort of was able to recover really quick. I think as well, what benefited obviously is the mindset and like my youthfulness and probably my naivety to things. And then also,
we were naive. Yeah. When I look back and think of it all, like we came, and I don't know if you'll remember this, you came out of hospital, and we pretty much maybe the next day went to the Australia Day. You were there, the Australia Day party at Brian's. Do you remember? Yeah, like even
that's where your hair looks stunning. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Even the saying goodbye, you go like, that has to just be because we were 18. We had nothing to lose, but like now like I think saying goodbye to you when you had your brain surgery one, very different because you've got 4 kids, you've got a whole life together.
Yeah.
Correct.
Whereas 18, you're blissfully unaware.
Well, I was just like, okay, Danielle, like if I go, like, look, I had a great, like, it was more of in my head, I was like, look, you've given me a great life, whatever. So then, but now it would be like, oh God, I got it. You know, I've got a lot more, I guess, baggage in the way of like, well, kids have got, you know, a mortgage, you've got all these things that you've got to try to support, but you've also got, you know, things to look forward to in the future. So, but and yeah, we went overseas, what a
year later.
A year later,
free,
and we went on a 3.5 month trip around Europe, and I felt like I was invincible because I was able to breathe. So, so as I said, it was like 12%.
Seems to feel like you are invincible.
Yeah. What did you call him before?
The cockroach. The cockroach.
But
King cockroach.
But what I was going to say was that so when I post transplant, I was at like 70. Oh, well, I'm still am at about 70%. So it's been around that. So yeah, it like completely obviously changes your life. You can move, you can walk, you can talk, you can do everything. Whereas like before, I would to even talk. Yeah, I'm sure you were aware. I would like struggle to breathe. I would, and I'm a talker, as you can tell. But yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, because with those transplants, it's not a guarantee that you're gonna like it's gonna extend your life or it's gonna actually make things better, right? Because there's so many things that they can go
so
wrong.
you then move on to rejection, and you still got all the other parts of cystic fibrosis. So still has like the reproductive, still has a digestive, still has all of that going on.
Yep.
But your lungs good.
Yeah, and then so yeah, I think that when we got back from Europe is when I was sort of like, if we can last in Europe and we don't fight or we don't do like we don't have any I guess arguments or whatever, then it's like, okay, well, she's the one. Like she obviously stuck around.
That's what proves
if
it.
I can make it through
Not
Europe,
not the fact that she stuck around with a bye as you've gone in for your transplant.
Well, you know that's like that is obviously what like.
Or that she got a job at the hospital you were at to spend more time with you.
That just sounds good. It was just coincidence.
That's so funny.
But more the part of like, you know, you
literally not the part that I hung around.
No.
Through sickness in health before we were married.
How long had you been dating before the transplant?
Well, that's depends who you are. So I didn't realise that we were together before. Because
you're high school sweethearts.
Yeah, well, yeah, for you we were. No, we were.
Because Murray had a big crush.
I had a big crush.
Because we were at one of his house parties and he cornered me in his room and told me that he liked me. And I fully went, sorry, and just pretended like I didn't hear it. And then he said it again and I sort of just like nothing. And then he said it again. And I went, oh, I have to go home. So because we lived on the same street, as you know. So I grabbed my stuff, I grabbed the girls and off we went. And I was just happy to pretend like it didn't happen. But you've got a lot of persistence. And then you brought it up again and whatever, we kept being friends, whatever.
Yeah, we were best friends. And I think that
because you would tape Beauty and the Geek, remember?
Yeah. But we were best friends. And I think that's what, at the end of the day, like, we've always been, I feel like we've always been friends, like, as in, like, you're my soulmate is the like,
cute.
Yeah. But is the, like, that is the, I guess, the premise of our relationship is that we were always best friends and we always, like, loved being, I guess, connected and having a friendship versus
just a relationship.
Yeah, and then you used to leave me on red.
Okay.
This guy, because I know when he was in hospital and he'd be doing nothing. I knew you were doing nothing, and he wouldn't reply. Of being like businessman or whatever. I'm like, what's this guy's deal? I know he's not doing anything.
He's just lying in the hospital bed.
Yeah, he's like, I didn't want to seem too eager. You put your whole heart out there. Anyway, so whatever. Fast forward a few months later, and you made this comment about like, you know, because like we're boyfriend girlfriend. And I said, excuse me. Because because like. Well, I can't remember the words you said, but like something along the lines of like, yeah, like, because you're my girlfriend. I said, oh. And then that's basically how it came to be. Yeah.
And then here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah. What are we, 15 years later?
Yeah. So that's how we could figure out the number of that you were longer, as in like the school. We got together in year 11. So.
Yeah.
12. 12.
I don't know. The
Whatever
maths
it
gets
was.
wishy-washy somewhere.
Okay, question for you then.
Yeah.
So you obviously knew Murray as the sick kid.
Yeah.
And then
the annoying sick kid.
How did that change and evolve for you?
Well, so I can remember. So we're in psychology. I had psychology. You were in there. And I didn't really have any friends in psychology. I had one. And then he moved out of the class. And our other friend, Tom, was in the class as well. And you used to sit with Tom. And I went, I guess I sit with Tom. And with Tom comes Murray. I was like, oh, okay. And then from there, we also had Bizman together.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was it, pretty much. We just started talking, and then that was that. He eventually started replying to messages more often. Not that you didn't reply.
It's a really good issue with that.
Yeah, not
You're
that you
going to
didn't
cop
reply.
it later when you get in the car.
Yeah, not that you didn't reply. You just weren't like on the pulse. I was a big texter.
Yeah.
And you were trying to be coy.
Yeah.
And then, Beauty and the Geek. We used to watch Beauty and the Geek. You used to record it because you were like the only one I knew that had a recorder. And we lived on the same street, so we'd just walk on down.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
I love that. And how did you feel with Muzz going in for his transplant? Because obviously, like we've said, fresh 18-year-olds, like we were just like, naive. But
Yeah, naive. I think that's it. I was at Yarrawonga, so I was, 4 hours away?
Yeah.
And I always said that if I go up to Yarrawonga while Murray's on the transplant, I'll drive. So if it happens, I can drive back. Ironically, I didn't drive. So one brother drove me halfway and the other brother, and I think Mum was there, picked me up and did like the cross and then brought me back. And it was like, oh my God, am I going to get there in time? You were at the Monash. Are we mentioning hospitals? Oh, well.
We've done it now.
You were at the Monash and you were waiting to be transferred to Alfred for your transplant.
Yeah.
Got there in time and I was literally just car hopping because then I met your siblings and then they took me to Alfred, it must have been. And then, I think it was just naivety of it. It was literally just, as we said, like high five, see you when you're out. It was never a question. You were always going to come out.
Yeah, I was always determined.
And I think
I always felt like obviously I was due a second go at it. So, and that's realistically what it is. So, I think that if I didn't have the transplant, I would have been dead within 6 months. And then, I had the transplant, was able to live a great, I am able to live a great life. And I realistically lived, I guess my thing was that live the life to the fullest and, I guess take it, as it comes. So definitely with the transplant, I went overseas and I was very, the doctors were, I think, a little bit maybe frustrated or they were a bit more cautious of me going overseas. But I always feel like you've got to have calculated risks in life. And I feel like if you've got calculated risks, you can you've just got to make sure that they're you've got a contingency somewhat. And then from that, I just always just went all in. So, going to America or Europe or wherever, I just sort of think, okay, I'm okay. I'll land on my feet if I have, a contingency or something in place.
Yeah. It's like the ultimate self-trust and positivity and just knowing that you're going to make it through.
I think that's what it is. And I was going to say that before, that even when you went in for your transplant, it was always like, okay, I'll see you when you come back. And I've always been confident of that. You'll always be fine. Yeah. Even whatever else you've had come your way, even your brain cancer, whatever, it's always it's different. Your brain cancer was different because obviously we've got the kids and everything, but it was always, there was no doubt. I'll see you when you wake up. You know what I mean? It was always, you were always going to come out of it.
Yeah.
Cockroach.
And they've actually done studies on that though, the mindset of people, and it can go both ways.
Yeah, of course.
If you tell someone that they're sick with, say, cancer and they actually don't have it, their body can sometimes actually make cancer.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that a lot recently.
Well, I haven't heard that. But anyway, I believe it. I understand why. And I think it's for example, I know that you you had like I couldn't exactly tell you but celiac and all that
And
kind of,
Crohn's,
like,
yeah.
and Crohn's and whatever. And I felt like even back then I had no knowledge of it or any of it, but it always felt like you had told yourself like, oh God, like I've got this, and you know you were almost like it was a debilitating thing that you were it was causing you.
You don't have that at all now?
Well, I've got it, but I don't have any symptoms. I'm in remission.
And
That's
this
so
is the part where I was going to say is like,
Amazing.
isn't it crazy though, your mindset and like the way it changes? Because like I was thinking that, you know, that your mindset at that time, which makes sense because you had a lot of other things going on at the same time, was such in a negative state that it would have like amplified itself, and it would have been like, I don't know exactly what you went through, but I know that it would have like continued down that path, and then
But
all
they
of a
say
sudden,
that even just with colds, like negative people are more likely to have colds and whatever. There was a podcast I was listening to the other day that I think it was the one you sent me, that like all of these office people, hedge fund workers or whatever, they were all sick and all had this cold that they just couldn't shake for 6 weeks because they were just so stressed.
That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. But yeah, I was in that like super negative mindset, and it was just like part of my identity, and it was like really ruining my whole life.
I think that's a big part when it's part of your identity.
Yeah, which is what we're saying as well with you, because it's not something you identify with.
yes,
And it's not the forefront of you. And I wonder how much that has actually played into your healing journey.
Which is tricky because people have always identified you as that.
But I don't think you have.
No, I agree with that.
Okay, cool. Anyway, so you've gone to, I love that before this, Murray was like, how does my story fit into your podcast? And it's like, this is exactly
And
it.
he's bringing it back to you.
Yeah.
Just like to let you know, this is how it fits
And
in.
then I heard I got a transplant at 11:11. I was like,
the same things as saying it on Friday 13th.
like, this is exactly how. Okay, so you've gone to Europe.
Yep.
You've realized, oh my God, if I can go to Europe with Danielle and we're not fighting,
yeah,
she's the one.
yeah.
Which
so,
we don't fight
so I
anyway. I'd like to put that in there.
yeah, of course. That's what I meant by that. Is like we don't.
I know, but it's not like we were having like
Oh.
all these wild fights and like
No,
we were
were-
cool for 3. Like we didn't fight.
No,
really.
I guess that's the point. Is that we definitely like made it work. You had like there was things that
You planned that whole trip.
yeah, but
We know she's a passenger princess now.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
but in general though is that we had an absolutely like we went to Tomatina and Oktoberfest, and we went to like we got to obviously stay all over Europe, and so it was the trip of a lifetime, but also I guess the most like you don't have anything to go back to, you don't have anything, and then all of a sudden, you know, when you get a house or kids or whatever, then you've sort of got this a lot more weight on it.
It's
So
like that trip that you look back on, like we can be in the trenches with the kids and we go, shit, remember that? That was so good. Like, did that actually happen?
yeah,
We've got like photos up just randomly of like from the trip. And we
Yeah.
go, remember that when we were so carefree?
yeah.
When we didn't know that all of this was coming?
Yeah.
So that's when I thought, okay, I'm past. So once it gets to about 3 years post, then they sort of the medications are weaned back and stuff. So I was taking it at the initial part of like so the week after transplant, I think it was like maybe 120 or 140 tablets.
What,
so
a day or a week?
daily.
Oh, sorry, a week. So yeah, so and that was just a rough whatever, but it was a lot of tablets.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it weans down, and you sort of get to. So when I went to Europe, it would have I pretty much packed half my suitcase in medication because I had to have 3.5, and I was like, okay, I can't just I can't have all my medication on just one bag. I've got to split it. I've got to there's all these things that had contingencies and things, but again, calculated risk. So I was like, okay, I'll pack 2 weeks worth of medication. Hopefully, if my bag gets lost, then I'll have I'll find it in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. And there was I had all the communication of what hospitals and whatever. So
Yeah.
but anyway, and then so 3 years post. So that's when I was still I went back full time and I was still working, and then
You were back before then.
yeah, but I'm more saying I was just I don't know, I guess we were
Yeah,
working.
Europe was a year after your transplant because you couldn't travel for a year after.
Yeah.
But you were firing on all cylinders straight after.
Yeah.
Well, not straight after.
And
You had to do
then,
your rehab and everything.
then we proposed at 21, which is crazy when I say it out loud and think about
The more you say it, and the
how
more we speak about
young
it lately,
we
I go,
were.
that is wild. 21 is wild. If our kids came to us and said that, I'm going to propose at 21, if Noah or Kai said that, we'd be like, are you sure?
But
when you know, you know.
But no one ever questioned anything.
no,
around
and I
us.
think that's because, you went through the thick and thin with me, so that meant that they knew you must have loved me. If that makes sense.
Well, not to that trip in Europe.
Yeah.
Weren't quite solid until then. When you know, right?
He's standing in Spain. He's just like, she's the one.
We
made it through.
for me.
That's not at all how it went, but that's how it sounded. So I'll take that.
You've
as-
always stuck firm on that. If we can make it through Europe, what have I been doing for the rest of the time? Wasting it?
Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you proposed at 21.
Yeah.
21, yeah.
Yeah.
And you imagine what the rest of our friends were doing.
Cocaine.
Well,
I was there. I remember it
I was gonna
clearly.
say, you-
I was in it.
Yes, very much so.
well, let me rephrase that. You know what the rest of our friends were doing.
I was there. Yeah.
We just imagine because we were so far the other way.
Yeah. You went down the marriage family route and everyone was like, party, drugs.
Yeah, which cool, you do you, boo.
Yeah.
And we just I knew that I was determined to I guess make my donor and my donor family proud. So I was more determined to go, okay, I want a family. I want what I want. I've got all these goals ahead of me.
You also grew up your whole life thinking you couldn't have kids.
True. So,
and for me, I was always having kids. That was a non-negotiable. So that one was a little bit
yeah, that's the conversation we did have
for you, because as far as I was concerned, if we were going down this route, having kids, if we made it through Europe, and we're getting married and having kids, it was never not happening.
Yeah.
I remember us going to the IVF, one of the appointments, and the guy was like, because then you still didn't know if you could have them.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, these are your options, and if it doesn't work, you can go down these routes, and it's a donor sperm or whatever the other options were. I remember not listening because I was like, we're having them. It's always going to. And I think it's that, as we were talking earlier, that positive thinking and whatever. It was never an option for me that we weren't having them.
But they do this thing normally with CFs, and it's pretty much you're missing the connection between
the vas deferens.
the vas deferens. Yeah,
so you've got the sperm, but you can't get it out yourself.
Yes, so they normally.
I was going to be really graphic.
Yes,
there.
no. So when a mummy and daddy, so you've got the goods. In layman's term, you've got the goods. You just can't get it out, which I think is a lot of people were confused about.
Yeah,
because we were so young, we had kids. So fair enough that people. I know we got a lot of questions at the start that people sort of thought they weren't yours.
Oh yes,
and there is no
I
doubt
didn't
that
they all
those
very
kids
much
are not
look
yours.
Seeing
them,
they're very much your children.
Yeah, so they were meant to just a basic surgery, which is you just put a needle into the testicles and then retrieve the sperm. But unfortunately, due to
you not doing things straightforward.
Yeah, and I think probably transplant and medications and a whole bunch of other things, which meant that my sperm was lazy. So
look at them now. He's got 4 kids.
But they ended up deeming
not lazy
that
anymore.
They couldn't do that course of action. So we ended up going to a doctor that I think there's only 1 or 2 of them in Australia, so we were very lucky. And he was in Victoria. That did what they call a micro teasy, but in layman's terms, as you say, is pretty much
they cut out part of the.
You cut your testicle in half, and then they grab that whatever, and then they pretty much they draw straws or the sperm out from a microscope.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty when you think of like how our kids came to be, you go, whoa, there was a lot of people involved in that and like the science and everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah. So it probably, if I tried to have kids 5 years earlier, it wouldn't have happened. So I guess it was meant to be. And then, I did the easy part, I think.
I don't know.
Because
you had your testicles cut open.
Yeah, but I guess the mental toll for IVF plus the physical toll, obviously, with not just IVF but also having kids and all the kids we had, and every single one of your pregnancies were.
Sometimes I just love to see what
No,
comes
no,
next.
You're just waiting patiently.
Because I go like, I'm pretty sure I know what he wants to say, but this one I've got nothing. I don't know what you're going to say.
We're complicated in not the pregnancy, but the labour was
Oh,
were
they
complicated.
were colourful, yeah.
Because they were all,
Colourful.
and I guess everyone's got a different journey and different story. So, but yes, I'm obviously very proud of Danielle and the way that she got through it, but also I think it's both of our mindsets. So
Yeah. So having that conversation, Danielle saying, well, obviously I'm having kids because that's part of my life. You going, I don't know if I can have kids.
And it was always we were always having kids. Yeah.
So how did that conversation happen?
Was it before your transplant even that we did genetic testing? Like we were deep into it, like from 18. We were driving. This is our sort of landmark things. Like we were driving.
Yeah.
You'd not had your transplant.
No.
I got genetic testing to see if I still early into relationship. That's how whatever word you want to choose. I'd go loony, but whatever. That I got genetic testing to see if I was a CF carrier. Because if I'm a carrier, you are a carrier because you've got CF. Now let's see if we get this right. Don't come at us if we don't. This is our understanding that you're a carrier. If I was a carrier, it then goes the same chances that Murray's parents with the kids having it. It's 1 in 4 chance that the kids will have CF. I wasn't a carrier, and I sort of figured I'll just get the testing because even if it wasn't Murray I was going to have kids with,
good to
my
know.
genetics aren't going to change.
Yeah,
right?
if I don't make it through this Europe trip and Murray thinks I'm the one.
Jesus, I shouldn't have said that.
So we got that, and even at the time there was still the doctors were a bit like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, they were.
And even then, then it came back that I'm not a carrier, so it's basically normal chances of your kids having cystic fibrosis, right?
Yeah.
For the most 300 common things. I could be making these numbers up. Then the chances are they're not going to have cystic fibrosis, but our kids will be carriers. Because Murray has it.
So then
their partners will need to be tested, and the cycle continues.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, but the conversation once we got so we almost didn't have. I don't think we had the true conversation of if I can't have kids, what are we going to
I don't think we needed to have the
because
conversation.
we didn't have it only because we were going to go down the micro teasy or that specific one, and then if that failed, then we've I guess
that's right. Before that, we always knew that it had to be IVF.
Yes, and then but that micro teasy part is the part where if that failed, then okay, that chapter or that that has been closed. We have exhausted all sort of angles, and then it was okay. Then we might have been in a different place because
your mindset might have been different for that than mine because you grew up thinking you couldn't have them.
True.
Where I was always having them.
Yeah, true.
So to me, the microteasy was never not working. The IVF was never not working.
So that's a positive mindset.
I'm seeing a theme. I'm really seeing a theme. Okay, so you've decided to have kids. You did the whole sperm retrieval.
Yeah.
Talk us through what happens next.
Well, we did a round first without the sperm retrieval with the one that didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty devastating because I had been so sure the whole time. But then it was sort of the first time the doctors, we were so young that we weren't on the stats for anything. So there was no success rates for us to see. It started from maybe 24 or something and we were 22 or 23. Wow. So as doctors are sort of trying to, I guess, for us, it felt like they're just trying to get to know your body and like what levels of medication work well. Trial and error is how we saw it.
Yeah.
And that might not necessarily be how it is, but that's the way we think of things. Even with like your transplant, it's just like, yeah, it'll be cool. Like it'll be fine. We're a bit maybe blasé about it, but it's always worked for us.
Yeah.
So then we went again for another round. I had to have another harvest. You had your microteasy.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like the maths of trying to like link that in and multiple doctors, and you want fresh eggs or the frozen eggs have to get thawed out or whatever. It's a whole thing. And then they get fertilized and you're just watching the numbers just dwindle day by day. They just dwindle. So it's like that time goes so slow. And each day you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's all consuming.
I think mentally it's one of the harder things.
I think we didn't notice when we were in it, but now you're out of it, you go, holy shit.
Yeah.
If I hear anyone saying they go through IVF, I go, oh my God, like my thoughts are with you, like all of that. Like it is a journey, and you don't realize until you're in it, even until you're out of it, how like consuming and just
The toll on the body, the toll on the mind.
the mind, I reckon, was the bigger one. I was okay with the body. I know like a lot of people have it far worse than I do. I had it from memory anyway. Sort of once things are done, they're out of sight, out of mind. But so then we got Noah and Indy from that.
Yep.
And we had a third one that we put in.
Yep.
And that one didn't work. And I was telling you, we always said, we sort of thought that if like the third doesn't work, that's okay. We're just meant to have two. Like that's what it is. Remember that conversation?
I remember that conversation, yes.
And then we got the phone call after the third one because they do the blood test, whatever.
Yeah.
Saying like, I'm really sorry, it didn't work, you're not pregnant.
Yeah.
Imagine being that person that makes the phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
I just like my heart goes out to them. As in like just they get to see, they obviously like they see the patient. They get to see like all
They
that
go
whole
through the
thing.
journey.
Yeah, they go through the journey with you, and then you're like, oh, I gotta make this call, and you like when you don't want to make a call.
All the
like,
time.
Yeah, and you're like, oh,
all the time.
I hate speaking on the phone.
And you're like, oh God, like I've got to make this call, and you like amp yourself up to like almost like talk yourself out of it. And I just can't imagine being in that situation because you'd be like, okay, like I've got to do it.
You are literally the bearer of bad news.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then I
but
guess
you're
on
also the giver of the best news.
Yeah, so it's like two sides of the same coin.
This nurse didn't even finish the sentence, and I was like, right, well, we're going again. It's not meant to be two. So then it's like, again, you're waiting for like
the whole process, but
it's time. Like you can't get in to see the doctor until however long. And it's like, no, I don't want to wait that long. And tears get you really far, don't they? So they got us in like really quick, and we went again, and I had to do another harvest. You still had your sperm
some
frozen.
straws, yeah.
Some straws. But by then,
well, that's what they call it.
Oh.
In the actual terminology, it's called straws.
We think. By then we're in COVID. So I'm going through the harvest and everything like that by myself. And again, we got good numbers. You're watching them dwindle down. And then I suppose, how did the twins come about? So I was doing the harvest, and I just said to them, like, any reason we're not putting two in at day 3, because you're desperate by then, because you've had your third didn't work, and you've decided you're not okay with 2, you want a third.
Yeah.
And when we put Noah in, the doctor put 2 in on day 3, and we were young and it was our first time and we had no idea. We went, okay, like sounds good if that's what you want to do. Sure.
Yeah. Is that a normal process?
No,
Okay.
This
it's different.
doctor was like wonderful, great for us, but he sort of like just did him, I think. But again, wonderful because he worked for us.
Yeah.
And that nurse was like, I'll ask the doctor and like see what he says. Okay, cool. Didn't think much of it until went home. But the thing is, with putting 2 in, that one of them can split, or both of them can split. So you can end up with 3 or maybe 4.
So you got to play, and like that. Actually, a conversation that we had was around like, are we prepared to have 2? Are we prepared to have 3? Like, what's the And I guess the conversation was like, I'm 9 or 8 years post transplant, and I'm not naive to the fact that there might be something coming for me, but obviously didn't see that one coming. But in the transplant world, I was like, okay, I think that we we should be okay. Like, yep, okay. Twins we could probably manage, but like obviously I didn't ever think it was going to happen. But I feel like.
That's what I was going to say earlier about how, like, when we're saying our friends, we were living a very different life. We always were, because we always knew you don't have forever.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
So we always were on a slightly different path because we were doing things in the now, I guess.
Yes, and I guess that was the philosophy of, I guess, life, is that you can't, you can't wait for things to happen. You've got to sort of create those things. So. So we did, and then so Danielle got a call. So you went with, what did you say? They put them in.
No, they were fertilizing them and growing them.
Growing them, yeah.
And then the nurse called me on day 2.
Yep, and said
to say she'd spoken to the doctor.
Yep.
Which I think is you happy for me to keep going? Or
Please keep going. Go.
So as they called me on day 2 to say, like, we've spoken to the doctor, he's happy to put 2 in on day 3, but we put this medication in you on the day 3, like an hour. No, I can't remember the details, but like you have to make the decision basically 5 minutes. You need to get to the pharmacy. The pharmacy's going to close. Whatever time it was, you had to make the decision now. So that's when you then called me.
Yeah, so it was the morning though, and it was just that you had to make the decision. I think it was by 1 p.m. that day. So it would have been like 9:30.
Okay. So you've gotten a call and be like, there's 2, you need to decide in the next few
I think
hours.
there was a few, that we still had a few, but the doctor has decided, he's happy for you to put 2 in tomorrow on day 3. You need to decide now because you have to get this medication. They have to put it in. The pharmacy's about to close. You have to get it from this pharmacy. You have to like get your ducks in a row. You have to come. Basically, you've got 5 minutes
to decide if you want twins or not.
Yeah. Well, no, if we want to roll the dice and have
roll the
2.
dice.
Yeah.
You just roll the dice.
Potential
because
twins.
Technically, it's like with IVF, obviously, there's not a high success rate in it. So, they've got it. And day 3 is, some would deem lower because it doesn't go to day 5, but some would believe that like it would be higher because it's in your body.
Okay.
Well, that was our belief. We don't know anything about
this
that.
Is not a
but our
educational
belief
or a fact-finding mission.
No, our belief was always that, like, is it not better for them to be back in their home where it's meant to be sooner than them growing longer in the dish? Doctors will probably tell you it's better to have them growing in the dish. They're a higher grade, better, whatever. Yeah. But when we put 2 in with Noah, we only got 1, so we thought
correct.
So
when
we
put 2 in with Noah, day 3,
we're going off
so
what
we
we
were like,
know.
okay, we'll do it. And then
I
So
think
Danielle's called Murray.
Well, no, my biggest stress at the time was like, right, what am I going to do with the kids I've already got to be able to go to the pharmacy because you were out on the roads for work?
Yeah, I was at work at the time for some, like, I was normally at home, but I had to go into work for something. Anyway, and so I was at work, and then I got a message on Facebook that can you please so from one of my good friends sisters, and I was like, okay, this is weird. So she said, oh, can you please call me? And then I said at the time that James, or the friend.
Were you trying to be really anonymous and then you just went, it's like the Simpsons episode where he's like, Lisa S. Oh no, that's too obvious. L. Simpson. That's just literally.
I never heard that before. That's funny.
Such a good episode. Anyway, okay, so you got a call.
I got a call.
Message.
I got a call anyway, and it was that he had committed suicide overnight, and wanted to let me know, but also, I guess, pass on the message to all the other boys.
Thank you so much for tuning into part 1 of Murray and Danielle's incredible story. If you love this episode, don't forget to rate it 5 stars and share it with someone that you love. We'll be back next week for part 2.